Welcome back to CelebRush, where we break down the celebrity chaos everyone else is too scared to touch. If you're into real drama, messy headlines, and the truth behind those polished Instagram posts, you're in the right place. Brooklyn claimed he was being controlled by his family, painting himself as trapped, then shocked everyone by throwing his own mother under the bus. Brooklyn Beckham and Nicola Peltz have been locked in a tense feud with the Beckham family since 2022. And what started as quiet tension has turned into full public warfare. For a while, everyone tried to smile for the cameras and keep it classy for the sake of the family name, but Brooklyn clearly had other plans. He jumped on Instagram with a 6-page story rant, trying to air out his own family like it was open season, and right after that, he was suddenly spotted on what looked like a perfectly timed paparazzi beach walk with Nicola. Thanks for watching and rocking with the channel. Make sure you're tapped in because these stories only get wilder. He accused Victoria of hijacking his first dance at the wedding, saying she danced inappropriately and ruined the moment. He even said the reason he and Nicola renewed their vows was to fix the humiliation they felt on their wedding day. And this is the same wedding that reportedly cost around $3 million, with not one, not two, but 3 wedding planners stepping down during the process. While Brooklyn poured out frustration, several of his claims started falling apart under scrutiny. The story that Victoria backed out of designing Nicola's wedding dress at the last minute was challenged by insiders, and other dramatic moments, like Nicola allegedly running from the reception in tears, were confirmed by people who were there. Now the wedding's DJ and even the butler are speaking out, adding more layers to this already explosive situation. Between the heated comments, exposed inconsistencies, Brooklyn reportedly being caught talking to the press, and parts of Nicola's past resurfacing, this saga is stacked with tension. There's a lot to unpack, and every piece of it hits harder than the last. Let's break it all down. For months now, reports have been swirling about how bad things have really gotten between Brooklyn Beckham and his family, his parents, his brothers, and even his younger sister. The tension isn't just behind closed doors anymore, it's spilling out everywhere. During what people called a massive social media blocking spree, Brooklyn reportedly even blocked 14-year-old Harper, which left fans shocked and confused about how deep this rift really goes. In this breakdown, we're going through everything: what Brooklyn claimed in his public statements, how his family reacted behind the scenes, and Nicola's carefully crafted image as the quiet one who just wants privacy. Brooklyn accused his own family of leaking stories about Nicola to the press, trying to paint them as the villains. But here's where it gets messy. There are receipts suggesting that Brooklyn himself may have been the one talking to media outlets. And if that's true, he should have been way more careful before stepping into the spotlight with those accusations. So make sure you're locked in, because this story keeps twisting. The drama didn't just appear out of nowhere, it traces all the way back to the wedding. To really understand Brooklyn's explosive Instagram posts, you have to rewind to April 2022, when tensions between the Beckham and Peltz families reportedly hit their peak. The wedding took place in Palm Beach, Florida, at the oceanfront estate of Nicola's father, billionaire investor Nelson Peltz. On the surface, it looked like a fairy tale ceremony dripping in luxury. But behind the polished photos and designer outfits, insiders were already whispering about tension bubbling under the surface. One moment that caught attention was when Nicola and Brooklyn decided to combine their last names, presenting themselves as Nicola and Brooklyn Peltz Beckham. Some saw it as romantic and modern, but others claimed it didn't sit well with David and Victoria. When David and Victoria publicly congratulated them, they referred to the couple as Brooklyn and Nicola Beckham, and fans immediately began reading between the lines. That wedding wasn't just a celebration, it was the spark that lit a long-burning family feud, and everything we're seeing now traces right back to that moment. Right after the wedding, Nicola dropped 2 emotional Instagram posts captioned, "Family is everything to me," but fans quickly noticed something loud in the silence. Brooklyn's entire family was missing from the spotlight, not a single Beckham front and center. Reports started flying that the Beckhams weren't deeply involved in the wedding planning and weren't even seated at the main family table with Nicola's side. And now, Brooklyn himself is backing up parts of that narrative, confirming the distance was real. Then came the dance floor drama. Stories circulated about Mark Anthony calling Victoria and Brooklyn up on stage for a surprise dance, and insiders claimed Nicola was left in tears and ran out of the room. That moment is still being referenced today as one of the sparks that ignited the tension. Add to that the wedding dress controversy. Victoria Beckham was originally expected to design Nicola's gown, but in the end, she didn't. Nicola publicly said there was no feud and explained that Victoria's atelier couldn't complete the dress in time, but critics weren't convinced it was that simple. During an interview with Vogue, Nicola laughed off rumors that she and Brooklyn were modeling their wedding after David and Victoria's iconic ceremony. She praised their wedding photos as legendary, but then made it clear that the celebration she and Brooklyn drew the most inspiration from was Iman and David Bowie's. That subtle shift in praise did not go unnoticed. By August 2022, Nicola was on the cover of Tatler, opening up about the pressure Brooklyn feels in his career and revealing that he often seeks guidance from her billionaire father. That detail raised eyebrows because it painted a picture of Brooklyn leaning more toward the Peltz side for direction. Around the same time, Nicola's family reportedly joined the couple on their honeymoon in the south of France, while the Beckhams were vacationing separately in Croatia. A pattern started forming, one side present, the other side absent. The vibe slowly shifted into what looked like an us versus them dynamic, and fans began choosing sides. And behind the scenes, whispers about wedding chaos were growing louder. There were reports claiming Nicola was difficult to work with, and people pointed to the fact that multiple wedding planners stepped down during the process. First was Preston Bailey, a well-known planner famous for organizing high-profile celebrity weddings, who reportedly exited just 6 weeks before the big day. When that kind of professional walks away that close to the event, people start asking serious questions. Then things got even messier. Ariana and Nicole from Planned Design Events were brought in to handle the wedding, but just 9 days after being hired, their contract was reportedly terminated. According to court documents, it was described as a day of reckoning, which already sounds intense. Nicola's billionaire father later sued to recover the deposit that wasn't returned. And after months of back and forth, a settlement was finally reached in September 2023. Eventually, Michelle Rago stepped in to take control of the wedding planning chaos. But when Nicola spoke to Vogue, she gave most of the credit to her own mother, saying, "I have to hand it to my mom, who really put this whole thing together. Luckily, we have the same taste." That comment raised eyebrows because it subtly shifted attention away from everyone else involved. As the years rolled on, speculation about a feud refused to die down. Nicola addressed it directly in an interview with the Sunday Times in October 2022, pushing back hard on the narrative. She said, "I keep seeing everywhere that word feud, feud, feud. I don't know why they say feud. I mean, maybe they picked up on something and now they're labeling it feud. No family is perfect." She made it sound like the drama was exaggerated, but the headlines kept stacking up anyway. Fast forward to 2025, and the tension wasn't fading. It was boiling over. That's when Brooklyn's Instagram outburst hit, and suddenly the private family strain turned into a public showdown. In the years after the wedding, Nicola and Brooklyn became noticeably absent from major Beckham family milestones. One of the biggest was David Beckham's 50th birthday celebration in May 2025, along with his early birthday party in Miami on March 30th. Their absence didn't go unnoticed, especially at events that were supposed to be all about family unity. The year before, in April 2024, Nicola was also missing from Victoria's 50th birthday bash. Still, she tried to smooth things over publicly by posting a photo of the Beckham family and writing, "Happy birthday to my beautiful mother-in-law at Victoria Beckham. I'm so sad I'm not there to celebrate with you and hug you." On the surface, it looked sweet and supportive. But when the appearances don't match the captions, people start reading between the lines. By this point, it wasn't just whispers anymore. It was a full shift in family dynamics playing out in real time. Nicola had previously posted warm messages like, "Sending all my love from me and my nanny. I miss you so much," and even shared a birthday tribute for Victoria just days before. On the surface, everything looked respectful and loving. But by 2025, the vibe had clearly shifted. Brooklyn and Nicola were absent from most major family events. Victoria's Paris Fashion Week show, Romeo's 23rd birthday party, and several other key moments that normally bring the whole Beckham crew together. By April 9th, when Brooklyn and Nicola celebrated their third wedding anniversary, the Beckham family didn't publicly acknowledge it at all. No posts, no comments, nothing. That silence spoke volumes to fans who were watching every move. Then things escalated. By late 2025, multiple outlets reported that Brooklyn had blocked his parents and siblings on social media, including his younger sister Harper, who many see as completely uninvolved in the drama. That detail alone made the situation feel even heavier. Even after Brooklyn and Nicola skipped David's 50th birthday celebration and didn't post about it, David still shared an Instagram story on May 5th from a fishing trip he had planned 6 months earlier for his birthday. He was pictured with his sons Cruz and Romeo and added a simple but pointed caption directed at Brooklyn Beckham saying, "You were missed." Short, calm, but powerful. Just weeks later, on May 25th, Brooklyn posted an Instagram story of himself with Nicola and wrote, "I always choose you." Fans immediately saw it as a subtle shot aimed at his parents. The timing made it hard to ignore. On August 2nd, Nicola and Brooklyn renewed their vows in a private ceremony. And once again, no members of the Beckham family were present. That move deepened the divide and made it clear this wasn't just temporary tension. By summer 2025, reports surfaced that Brooklyn had allegedly sent a legal notice to David and Victoria requesting that all communication go through lawyers. According to sources, Brooklyn felt his boundaries weren't being respected and believed his parents were referencing him publicly instead of contacting him privately. Meanwhile, David and Victoria were described as confused and hurt, reportedly still trying to keep the door open despite everything. And here's the key detail. There hasn't been clear public evidence of David or Victoria openly attacking or shading Brooklyn and Nicola. Most of the strong accusations have come directly from Brooklyn's side, which adds another layer to this already complicated family standoff. Now, on this channel, we've seen a pattern before. Sometimes the loudest accusations come from the side that can't fully back them up. But let's stay fair and walk through the facts step by step. On October 8th, Nicola and Brooklyn did not attend the red carpet premiere of Victoria Beckham's Netflix documentary. That was a major public moment for Victoria, and their absence did not go unnoticed. By December 2025, reports surfaced claiming David and Victoria had unfollowed Brooklyn after it was revealed he would be spending Christmas with Nicola and her billionaire parents instead of the Beckhams. But then the story flipped. Brooklyn's younger brother Cruz jumped into the comments and directly shut that narrative down. He reportedly shared a screenshot and wrote, "Not true. My mom and dad would never unfollow their son. Let's get the facts right. They woke up blocked, as did I." That response changed the tone completely. Instead of David and Victoria cutting ties, it suggested they were the ones suddenly cut off. Rewind to July 2025, and Brooklyn had already unfollowed both Romeo and Cruz. What made it confusing was that he had just posted a birthday tribute to his sister Harper, sharing a photo of himself and Nicola with her and writing, "Happy birthday, Harper. We love you." He even tagged Nicola in the post. Public love on one side, social media distance on the other. It felt inconsistent. At the time, some claimed Brooklyn unfollowed his brothers because Romeo and Cruz were subtly shading him online. But let's look at what was actually posted before jumping to conclusions. In July 2025, Romeo shared a message on Instagram stories that read, "Life is too short. Love who you love and tell them how much you really do. Life can flash before your eyes at any moment, but the people that truly love you and care for you will always be there. Don't hold back from love or appreciation for anything or anyone." Now here's important context. That post came right after Romeo's breakup with his girlfriend Kim Turnbull and during a period of public mourning following the passing of Liverpool footballer Diogo Jota and his brother. So was that message a dig at Brooklyn? Or was it about personal heartbreak and loss? That depends entirely on interpretation. From the outside, it could read as general reflection during a tough time. But because of the already tense family dynamic, every post started being analyzed like it was coded messaging. When trust is low, even neutral words can feel loaded. At this point, what we're seeing isn't just sibling tension. It's a full breakdown in communication playing out publicly, with social media becoming the battleground. So, a lot of people looked at Romeo's earlier post and felt it wasn't shade at all. It seemed more connected to his breakup and everything happening around him at the time. But then, Romeo reposted a still from the Audrey Hepburn film Roman Holiday, including the line, "What the world needs is a return to sweetness and decency." Underneath it, he wrote, "Be nice to people and don't tell unnecessary lies." That line right there had fans raising their eyebrows. Was that a general life message, or was it aimed at someone specific? Because in the middle of a public family fallout, words like that hit differently. Then in May, Cruz added his own post into the mix. He shared a message that read, "It takes 43 muscles in your face to frown and 17 to smile." He followed it up with, "Be kind and tell the truth." Again, on its own, that sounds harmless and positive. But when tensions are already high, even a basic quote can look like a coded message. So what's the verdict? Was this subtle shade from the brothers, or is Brooklyn reacting strongly to everything around him? That's where opinions start to split. For context, there were rumors that part of the tension started because Romeo was dating Kim Turnbull, who had once been linked in gossip to Brooklyn. But Kim publicly shut that down, saying she had never been romantically involved with Brooklyn in any capacity and that their connection never went beyond school friendship. In April 2025, Romeo even commented on Instagram, stating that Brooklyn and Kim never dated. That comment was later deleted, which only fueled more speculation. So now that we've laid out the full timeline and context behind the feud, it's time to break down Brooklyn's explosive Instagram stories and the claims that followed. Brooklyn opened his Instagram rant by saying, "I have been silent for years and made every effort to keep these matters private. Unfortunately, my parents and their team have continued to go to the press, leaving me with no choice but to speak for myself and tell the truth about only some of the lies that have been printed." Right from the start, he positioned himself as someone pushed into a corner. He accused his parents and their team of leaking stories to the media, claiming he was forced to defend himself publicly. But here's the reality. Media outlets talk to multiple sources. In high-profile families, information can come from friends, extended connections, industry insiders, or even simple speculation that spreads on its own. When someone claims the press is being fed by one specific side, that's a serious accusation, and without clear evidence, it becomes difficult to know who is actually driving the narrative. That's where things start getting complicated, because once accusations go public, there's no easy way to pull them back. When it comes to Brooklyn and Nicola, one thing stands out. David and Victoria haven't publicly gone after them. There's been no direct statement attacking Nicola, no interviews calling Brooklyn out. Most of the negative commentary has come from people outside the immediate family circle, often described as insiders or former associates. One of the loudest critics has been Nicola's former hairstylist, Justin Anderson. Back in 2019, long before the wedding drama exploded, he openly criticized Nicola after what was described as an altercation between them. According to reports, she claimed he damaged her hair, and things spiraled from there. Justin didn't stay quiet. He later commented under an Instagram post, writing that Brooklyn's wife was one of the worst celebs I've ever worked with. It's her 100. She's a bad apple, even adding a red flag emoji at the time. He also referenced how close the Beckham family is, implying that bringing certain energy into a tight-knit family dynamic could cause friction. Then he took another swing, suggesting that Nicola's level of fame didn't match the scale of attention the situation was getting. He reportedly responded to claims that he was chasing attention by saying, "If I wanted attention, I would talk about really big people, you know." That line was clearly meant to sting. Justin doubled down in later comments, repeating that in his opinion she gave off not good energy. He even tied that perception to the wedding planning chaos, pointing to the multiple planners who stepped down during the process. In one Instagram story, he wrote, "I thought she wasn't a thing anymore when I talked about her, but then she married into a very famous family." That comment reignited the entire narrative. Speaking about the engagement, he claimed that when he heard they were getting married, he reacted with concern, saying, "Oh gosh, this is not going to be good for that family. Spooky energy." He added that he didn't feel bad expressing that opinion, arguing that when someone isn't kind, it eventually becomes visible. Back in 2019, Justin even appeared on a podcast where he described Nicola as difficult to work with and stated he would never collaborate with her again. Those clips resurfaced once the Beckham feud began trending, and suddenly old industry grievances were being re-examined under a new spotlight. Now it's important to separate personal opinion from confirmed fact. Justin's comments reflect his experience and perspective, but they don't automatically confirm broader family dynamics. Still, when multiple wedding planners left and a former stylist publicly criticized her years earlier, critics started connecting dots. Whether those dots truly form a clear picture or just add more noise depends on how you interpret the timeline. What's undeniable is that once public figures clash with former collaborators, those past conflicts can resurface fast, especially when a high-profile family feud is already making headlines. Just for context, Justin Anderson isn't some random voice online. He's worked with major stars like Miley Cyrus, Jennifer Aniston, and Katy Perry. So when he speaks, people listen. That's part of why his past comments about Nicola resurfaced so quickly once the Beckham drama exploded. But he's not the only one reacting. Alana Hadid, sister of Anwar Hadid, also stepped into the conversation. When someone commented that an 8-paragraph rant about family drama didn't exactly scream privacy, Alana replied, "Right, and that girl doesn't want privacy. She's been trying to be famous for a decade," followed by laughing emojis at the time. That response added another layer to the public narrative. For background, Nicola dated Anwar Hadid from 2016 to 2018. During that time, she was 22 and Anwar was 17. Reports later suggested their relationship ended amid tension between families. Some sources claimed there were strained dynamics involving Anwar and his mother, Yolanda Hadid. Allegations circulated that Nicola leaned heavily into the Hadid name during a time when Bella and Gigi Hadid were dominating the fashion world. Less than a year after the breakup, Nicola reportedly unfollowed members of the Hadid family on Instagram, and rumors began spreading that the relationship had been difficult behind the scenes. There were claims that Yolanda attempted to intervene in the situation to protect her son, though these accounts remain based on unnamed sources and speculation, rather than public statements from the family themselves. Now here's where things get even louder. Longtime celebrity gossip commentators have claimed that Nicola has carried a challenging reputation in certain Hollywood circles for years. Old social media responses and anonymous Q&A posts resurfaced, with critics using harsh language to describe her personality. However, it's important to remember that online commentary, especially from years ago, often reflects personal bias and rumor rather than verified fact. The key point here is this: much of the negative chatter surrounding Nicola hasn't come directly from David or Victoria Beckham in public. Instead, it's come from former collaborators, extended industry figures, or online commentators weighing in with their own experiences or opinions. And here's the twist. While Brooklyn has accused his parents of speaking to the press, some outlets have suggested that Brooklyn himself may have been communicating with media sources about the family tension. If that's true, it shifts the entire narrative, because accusing others of leaking stories while possibly engaging with reporters yourself is a bold move. At the end of the day, what we're seeing is a mix of personal grievances, resurfaced history, and media amplification. In celebrity families, once cracks start to show, every old story, every former relationship, and every past comment gets pulled back into the spotlight. And if Brooklyn is claiming one side is driving the narrative while evidence hints multiple voices are involved, then this feud is far more layered than a simple he said, she said situation. So keep watching, because this is where Brooklyn really doubles down. He continued by saying, "I don't want to reconcile with my family. I'm not being controlled. I'm standing up for myself for the first time in my life." Now that line hit hard, because when someone publicly says they're not being controlled, people immediately start asking why that even needs to be said. It felt like a direct response to the growing public opinion that Nicola has major influence over him. There's also been a long-running rumor that Nicola tends to date younger men, with critics suggesting that dynamic makes things easier to steer. Nicola is 31, while Brooklyn is 26, turning 27 in March. That age gap isn't extreme, but in celebrity gossip circles, it's been used as part of the narrative. The way Brooklyn framed his statement, "Standing up for myself for the first time," made him sound like someone breaking free from something heavy. But for many viewers, that victim tone didn't sit well, especially considering he grew up in one of the most privileged environments imaginable, with massive support, resources, and connections handed to him from day one. Critics pointed out that his parents funded opportunities, backed his creative ventures, and promoted his projects publicly. And some fans felt frustrated seeing him paint the situation as lifelong control while benefiting from that platform. That contrast is what made reactions so split. Then Brooklyn escalated his claims. He said, "For my entire life, my parents have controlled narratives in the press about our family. The performative social media posts, family events, and inauthentic relationships have been a fixture of the life I was born into." That's a serious accusation. He went on to say he had seen with my own eyes the lengths they would go to in order to plant lies in the media to protect their image. He claimed these actions mostly harmed innocent people while preserving a polished public facade. And then he added, "But I believe the truth always comes out." The problem: he didn't provide specific examples or evidence of these countless lies. That left a lot of room for doubt. When you accuse your family of media manipulation, people expect receipts, not just emotion. Then came one of the biggest claims yet. Brooklyn stated, "My parents have been trying endlessly to ruin my relationship since before my wedding, and it hasn't stopped. My mom canceled making Nicola's dress in the 11th hour despite how excited she was to wear her dress, forcing her to urgently find a new dress." That wedding dress allegation reignited the entire 2022 controversy, because at the time, Nicola had publicly said there was no feud and that Victoria's atelier simply couldn't complete the gown in time. Now Brooklyn was reframing it as a last-minute cancellation that caused stress and embarrassment. When timelines don't fully match earlier public statements, people start questioning which version is accurate. And once those contradictions surface, the conversation shifts from sympathy to scrutiny real fast. Before making a claim that big, you have to remember something important. British Vogue covered that entire wedding in detail, and not just lightly either. Brooklyn framed it like Nicola was scrambling at the last minute for a dress, but Vogue reported that her custom gown was the result of nearly a year of planning with Valentino's creative director Pierpaolo Piccioli and his team. There were 2 trips to the Rome headquarters, multiple US fittings, and even the head seamstress traveled to Miami to perfect every detail. On the wedding day, it was described as the ultimate couture experience. That doesn't sound rushed or chaotic. Nicola herself addressed the situation back in October 2022. She said, "I think it all started, and I've said this before, because I didn't end up wearing Victoria's wedding dress." She went on to explain that she truly wanted to wear one designed by Victoria and thought it was beautiful that Brooklyn's mom could create it for her. But then she clarified that Victoria called her mother and explained that the atelier wouldn't be able to complete the dress in time. Nicola then labeled the feud rumors ridiculous. That version of events suggests there was communication. It doesn't paint a picture of someone being abandoned at the last second. And if the Valentino gown had already been in development for a year, that timeline matters. Now, is it possible Victoria had her own reasons for stepping back from designing the dress? Of course, but stepping back due to timing constraints is very different from intentionally sabotaging your future daughter-in-law. Based on Nicola's own past words, she was informed ahead of time that the dress couldn't be completed. Then Brooklyn escalated things again. He claimed that weeks before the wedding, his parents pressured him to sign away the rights to his name. He used heavy words like bribed and suggested the deal would have impacted him, Nicola, and even their future children. According to Brooklyn, they were determined for him to sign before the wedding, so certain terms would activate. He said refusing to sign affected a financial payout and that his parents' behavior toward him changed after that. But here's where people started raising eyebrows. Brooklyn described it as signing away my name, which sounds dramatic. Yet he didn't clearly explain what the agreement actually involved. Was it a standard business licensing deal tied to branding? Was it about trademark rights for commercial projects, or something else entirely? Without specifics, the language sounds explosive but lacks detail. When someone uses words like bribe and signing away my name, it creates a powerful emotional reaction. But without outlining the exact terms of the agreement, the public is left guessing. And when major accusations are made without clear documentation or explanation, it opens the door for doubt. That's what made this portion of his rant so controversial. The claims were serious, the wording was intense, but the concrete details were missing. And in a family already under a microscope, vague accusations only add more fuel to the fire. Instead of laying out clear facts, Brooklyn leans heavily on dramatic wording to frame himself as the oppressed one in this media battle. Phrases like "signing away my name" and "being pressured" are powerful, but without documents or specifics, they stay emotional instead of factual. And here's where critics start whispering louder. Some believe Nicola, as the daughter of a billionaire with her own long history in elite circles, may have more influence behind the scenes than Brooklyn lets on. Over the years, she's faced various rumors online, claims her family has strongly denied. But the point is this: controversy has followed her before. So when this full-blown Beckham expose explodes, people naturally wonder who is shaping the strategy behind it. Still, there are no public documents showing the exact details of the contract Brooklyn described. No breakdown of what signing away his name truly meant. Was it a standard branding agreement tied to business ventures? A trademark management deal? A licensing structure connected to the Beckham empire? These types of contracts are common in high-profile families where the name itself is a global brand. If the deal was truly harmful or unfair, critics ask, why not explain the terms clearly? Why not say, "We disagreed on management structure," instead of using loaded language that paints the situation as extreme? The lack of clarity leaves room for interpretation. And let's be honest, when you grow up inside a powerful global brand, your name carries weight. Choosing to publicly emphasize the Peltz name alongside Beckham was always going to create branding tension. That doesn't automatically make anyone the villain. From a business standpoint, both sides would naturally want to protect their interests. Some argue that David and Victoria built an empire that opened doors for Brooklyn from day one. From photography to cooking ventures, he's had access to opportunities many could only dream of. So when business conversations get complicated, it's not shocking that emotions run high. Then Brooklyn added another explosive detail. He claimed that during wedding planning, his mother went so far as to call him evil because he and Nicola chose to seat his longtime nanny Sandra and Nicola's nanny at their main table. According to him, both women had lost their husbands, and he wanted to honor them by giving them a special place at the table. He said both sets of parents had their own tables equally close to the couple. Now that seating arrangement became another flashpoint. Imagine being the parents of the groom and not sitting directly at the central table. Some people see Brooklyn's choice as sentimental and thoughtful. Others argue that in traditional wedding etiquette, the parents of the bride and groom are typically central figures. This is where perception splits again. Was it a heartfelt gesture toward loved caretakers, or a decision that unintentionally sidelined family elders? Without hearing both sides directly, it's impossible to know the full context. But what's clear is that these moments, contracts, seating charts, branding disputes, aren't just minor disagreements. They're stacking up into something much deeper, where personal pride, business interests, and family identity are all colliding at once. And let's not forget, her nanny was also seated at that main table. This was one of the details reported back in 2022 when the wedding fallout first started making noise. But critics argue the way it all unfolded didn't feel innocent. They say it looked less like a sweet gesture and more like a carefully framed explanation after the fact. And once again, it doesn't feel like something Brooklyn would orchestrate alone. And when you zoom out and look at all the wedding issues stacked together, the planners stepping down, the dress confusion, the seating drama, it stops looking like random misunderstandings. To some observers, it starts to feel like a slow sidelining of the Beckhams from their own son's big day. And that's why the next claim Brooklyn made hit even harder. He said that the night before the wedding, members of his family told him Nicola was not blood and not family. That's a serious allegation. If true, that kind of statement would cut deep. But again, no names were attached, no context provided, and no one else publicly confirmed that exchange. Brooklyn then claimed that from the moment he began standing up for himself, he received endless attacks from his parents, both privately and publicly, and that stories were sent to the press on their orders. That's a heavy accusation. It frames the situation as organized and intentional. But here's where critics push back. So far, there hasn't been clear public evidence tying negative press stories directly to David or Victoria. Most of the harsh commentary about Nicola has come from former collaborators, social figures, or long-standing gossip discussions that existed years before this feud escalated. Some commentators have pointed out that Nicola's reputation in certain circles didn't start with the Beckhams. Stories, opinions, and criticism were already circulating long before she married into the family. That timing matters, because if negative narratives predate the wedding, it weakens the argument that they're all being planted by one specific side. When accusations are broad but lack receipts, people begin to question the strategy behind them. Is this a genuine call-out of behind-the-scenes behavior, or a reaction fueled by emotion and outside influence? At this stage, what's clear is that the narrative isn't simple. There are long-standing reputations, old industry relationships, and multiple perspectives colliding all at once. And when timing lines up with years of prior gossip from outside the Beckham circle, it adds another layer to the puzzle that can't be ignored. In the years after the wedding, Victoria and Nicola didn't exactly look like enemies in public. They posted photos together, praised each other in interviews, danced side by side at events, and presented what looked like a united front. That directly clashes with Brooklyn's claim that there was constant sabotage happening behind the scenes. At the very least, it makes everyone look inconsistent. Because if those moments were just branding and damage control, then Brooklyn and Nicola were participating in the same PR strategy he's now condemning. That contradiction is what made people pause. You can't accuse someone of playing a media game if you were smiling for the same cameras and posting the same polished family shots. Then there's Preston Bailey, the original wedding planner who stepped away before the big day. He said that if there was tension behind the scenes, it wasn't visible in the lead-up to the wedding. According to him, everything appeared calm and professional from his vantage point. That doesn't exactly support the idea of a secret smear campaign unfolding behind closed doors. Preston also expressed surprise at Brooklyn's current stance. He described the Brooklyn he met as kind, polite, and easygoing, just a regular guy who would greet people and make small talk. That's very different from the Brooklyn now speaking publicly with sharp accusations and heavy language. Critics have pointed out something else too. Brooklyn ends his public airing of family grievances by saying he wants privacy. That's a hard sell when the grievances themselves are being broadcast to millions. You can't drop a bomb and then say you don't want attention. Then Brooklyn claimed that even his brothers were sent to attack him on social media, before eventually blocking him. But Cruz publicly stated that it was Brooklyn who blocked the entire family first. So which version is accurate? The timelines don't perfectly line up, and that inconsistency fuels even more speculation. Now comes the first dance controversy, and this is where things truly exploded. Brooklyn claimed, "My mom hijacked my first dance with my wife, which had been planned weeks in advance to a romantic love song in front of our 500 wedding guests. Mark Anthony called me to the stage where in the schedule it was planned to be a romantic dance with my wife, but instead my mom was waiting to dance with me. She danced very inappropriately on me in front of everyone. I've never felt more uncomfortable or humiliated in my entire life." That statement is intense. For one, describing your own mother's behavior as very inappropriate in front of hundreds of guests is not a light accusation. It's emotionally loaded and guaranteed to spark outrage. Second, there has been no public video evidence released showing anything clearly inappropriate. Wedding receptions often include multiple dances, father-daughter, mother-son, couple dances, and without footage or a full event schedule, it's difficult to confirm exactly how that moment unfolded. And third, if this moment was as humiliating as described, it's surprising that it didn't dominate headlines immediately after the wedding. Instead, it resurfaced years later during an already heated family conflict. When serious allegations are introduced long after the event itself, people naturally question timing. Is this a memory being reinterpreted through emotion, or was it truly as dramatic as described? What makes this part so explosive isn't just the accusation, it's the way it reframes a major wedding memory into something deeply uncomfortable and public. And once that kind of claim is out there, it permanently shifts how people look at that entire day. Here's where the first dance story really starts falling apart for some critics. First, the claim clashes with the detailed wedding coverage that Vogue published at the time. That event was documented carefully, and there were reportedly around 500 guests in attendance. If something truly outrageous or inappropriate happened in front of that many witnesses, it likely would have exploded instantly, not resurfaced years later in the middle of a family feud. Second, accusing your own mother of dancing inappropriately on you in front of hundreds of guests is an extreme allegation. Brooklyn emphasized how uncomfortable and humiliated he felt, but critics quickly pointed out that publicly framing it that way would likely be humiliating for Victoria as well. Once that statement hit Instagram, every old video of Victoria dancing, at fashion shows, birthday parties, even casual clips with Brooklyn and Nicola, started getting dissected online. People began overanalyzing her body language, her personality, her energy. That's a serious ripple effect from one accusation. And third, this is where things get very interesting. The exact same hijack the dance narrative appeared in People magazine months earlier. Back in May 2025, People reported that a source claimed Brooklyn and Nicola were hurt after Victoria allegedly hijacked a dance at the wedding. The wording was strikingly similar. The article stated that Mark Anthony, a longtime friend of the Beckhams, had offered to perform as a wedding gift. Before one of the songs began, he invited Brooklyn to the stage and then announced, "The most beautiful woman in the room tonight. Come on up, Victoria Beckham." That framing, Victoria stepping up unexpectedly, was already circulating in media months before Brooklyn's Instagram post in January 2026. So here's the question critics are asking. What are the odds that an unnamed source just happened to use the exact same hijacked wording months earlier? Is it coincidence, or was this narrative already being quietly shared with outlets during the height of the family tension? Because timing matters. That People magazine story dropped in May 2025, right when Brooklyn was noticeably distancing himself from family events. At the time, the story didn't create massive waves. It came and went. But now, months later, Brooklyn presents it as a deeply personal revelation, as if it's brand new information. Some observers believe this suggests the story may have already been circulating behind the scenes, and when it didn't generate the reaction expected, it was later amplified directly through Instagram. And here's where the irony gets even stronger. After the People article went live, Nicola posted on her Instagram story, "I would choose my mom to be my mom in every lifetime again and again and again." On the surface, that's a sweet, loving message, but media outlets immediately interpreted it as a subtle response to the Victoria dance narrative. So now you have this layered situation. A dance story reported by an unnamed source months earlier, a nearly identical version posted publicly later, and a social media response that many saw as indirectly addressing the drama. Are we looking at coincidence, miscommunication, emotional reinterpretation of an awkward moment, or a media strategy unfolding over time? Because when phrasing matches that closely across months, and when the timing aligns with escalating family distance, it raises legitimate questions about who was speaking to the press first. What do you think? Coincidence or calculated rollout? Now here's where the timeline becomes crucial. Nicola and Brooklyn's actual first dance was to Elvis Presley's "Can't Help Falling in Love," performed live by Lewis. There are photographs of that moment. It was documented. So when Brooklyn frames the Mark Anthony segment as his first dance being hijacked, critics immediately point to the receipts, because visually and journalistically the first dance already happened earlier in the night. He also describes the Mark Anthony moment as if it interrupted a central wedding tradition mid-ceremony, but Vogue's detailed account paints a different picture. According to their coverage, around 11 p.m., the circular stage rotated 180 degrees and Mark Anthony appeared for a surprise live set. That sounds less like a formal reception interruption and more like the transition into the after-party portion of the night, when energy shifts and guests hit the dance floor. Vogue specifically reported that Brooklyn invited his mother onto the stage for a dance, and that David and their young daughter later joined as well. That detail matters, because Vogue wedding features are not random blog posts. They are pre-approved, coordinated, and fact-checked with the couple's team ahead of publication. If Brooklyn was humiliated or blindsided, critics ask why Vogue would report that he personally invited Victoria up, and why that version wasn't challenged immediately back in 2022. Now, to be fair, there is one part of this situation that many people agree felt awkward. Mark Anthony reportedly announced, "The most beautiful woman in the room tonight." and called Victoria Beckham to the stage instead of the bride. In a wedding setting, that can understandably sting. Many viewers have said they would also feel uncomfortable if that happened at their own reception. And it's important to note that it was Mark Anthony who made that announcement, not Victoria herself. It could have been spontaneous stage energy rather than something planned to overshadow Nicola. From Brooklyn and Nicola's perspective, though, the emotional impact may have felt very different. Remember that People magazine article from May 2025? The source quoted there claimed Nicola felt that Victoria ruined her wedding moment. A second insider added that the room allegedly fell silent after Mark Anthony called Victoria's name. They described it as jaw-dropping, saying you could hear a pin drop. That same source claimed guests were surprised when Victoria slow danced with her son and suggested it wasn't appropriate in the context of what was supposed to be a romantic moment for the newlyweds. According to that version, Nicola was so upset that she ran from the room in tears. The narrative presented was that she believed Victoria acted intentionally, knowing it was meant to be Brooklyn and Nicola's spotlight moment, and the question that lingered was why. But here's where the contradictions deepen. A separate source later told media that the evening unfolded very differently. That version states Nicola and Brooklyn had already completed their formal first dance earlier in the night, and Nicola had also shared the traditional father-daughter dance before the Mark Anthony segment even began. If that's accurate, then the Mark Anthony performance wasn't interrupting the primary romantic dance at all. It was part of the later entertainment portion, when guests were celebrating more freely. This is why the situation remains so divided. One side frames it as a shocking public humiliation. The other frames it as a high-energy after-party moment that's being reinterpreted years later through the lens of family tension. When you stack the documented timeline, the Vogue coverage, the People magazine sources, and Brooklyn's Instagram wording side by side, the story doesn't align perfectly. And when timelines clash like this, people naturally start questioning intent. Was this a genuine emotional wound that lingered for years, a misunderstanding amplified by pride, or a moment being reframed strategically during a larger family fallout? That's the core of the controversy, not just what happened on that stage, but how the same moment can be described in completely different ways depending on who is telling it. Multiple reports say Brooklyn and Nicola actually had two dances together that night. The formal first dance happened earlier, and when Mark Anthony came out much later in the evening, it was during the part of the reception when, as one source put it, everyone was casual. That detail matters. According to accounts from the DJ, Mark Anthony performed, the mood shifted into full celebration mode, and people flooded the dance floor. Brooklyn danced with Victoria, David danced with Harper, and guests were just enjoying the music. From that version, it wasn't some sacred spotlight moment being stolen. It was a high-energy after-party vibe. Now, about the inappropriate label. The DJ reportedly suggested that what some people might interpret as awkward could also be a cultural clash. The Beckhams are known to be a very expressive, dance-loving family. Big personalities, big energy. In some cultures, that kind of dancing is completely normal and affectionate, not scandalous. And even if the room didn't see it as inappropriate, Brooklyn may have still felt uncomfortable. Feelings are personal, but that doesn't automatically make the moment malicious. The DJ also described the dance as spontaneous, a spur-of-the-moment thing, not some carefully plotted takeover. That directly challenges the idea that this was a calculated attempt to overshadow the bride. Then a butler who worked the wedding offered another layer. According to him, Nicola was mainly devastated by Mark Anthony's comment calling Victoria the most beautiful woman in the room. That announcement, not the dancing itself, was reportedly what hit hardest. The butler even stated that suggesting the fallout was caused by Victoria twerking with her son was misleading. He said the bigger issue was the wording that came before the dance. He went further, claiming Victoria has been unfairly cast as the villain in this story. In his account, Nicola reacted strongly to feeling upstaged. He described it as an overreaction to an unplanned moment that spiraled emotionally. Now, that's his perspective, but it sharply contrasts with the narrative Brooklyn later presented online. According to that same source, after the wedding tensions rose, Nicola allegedly drew a hard line with Brooklyn. The claim was that she told him he needed to choose between her and his parents. That's a powerful and painful position for anyone to be in if true. But again, this comes from unnamed insiders, not direct confirmation from the couple. What seems clear is this: there are two completely different interpretations of the same night. One version says it was humiliating and intentional. The other says it was spontaneous, culturally expressive, and blown out of proportion. Personally, many observers struggle to picture Victoria secretly coordinating with Mark Anthony to sabotage her own son's wedding. That feels extreme. Mark Anthony is a longtime friend of the family, and he's also an experienced performer who likely thrives on dramatic stage energy. In the heat of a live performance, calling someone the most beautiful woman in the room may have been instinctive hype, not strategy. It was late in the evening. The formal dances were already done. The party energy was high. Guests were celebrating. Was the comment unnecessary? Probably. Was it worth leaving your own wedding in tears over? That depends entirely on emotional perspective. And here's the part critics keep circling back to. If the moment was spur of the moment and happened long after the official first dance, why frame it years later as a deliberate hijacking of a planned romantic moment? When you line up the timelines, the multiple dance accounts, the DJ's explanation, and the butler's perspective, the situation looks far more layered than a simple villain story. At the core, this feels less like one shocking dance and more like unresolved tension that had already been simmering. And that moment just became the symbol of everything else bubbling underneath. At a certain point, people started saying, "Is this really that deep?" Reports suggest the Mark Anthony moment may have actually been Victoria and Brooklyn's first mother-son dance of the night, done in a lively Latin style. The Beckhams are known for dancing with energy and rhythm. Maybe it felt intense in the moment, maybe it didn't match expectations, but framing it years later as a traumatic humiliation feels like a stretch to some critics. And here's what makes it even more complicated. Brooklyn later cited that exact dance incident as one of the reasons he and Nicola renewed their vows privately. He said they wanted to create new memories for our wedding day that bring us joy and happiness, not anxiety and embarrassment. That's a powerful statement. But critics argue the wedding had already been structured in a way that heavily centered Nicola's side of the family. At the original ceremony, her family was front and center. At the vow renewal, her father officiated. She wore a gown repurposed from her mother's wedding dress. The symbolism was strong and clear. Meanwhile, no members of the Beckham family were present. When you look at the full pattern, some people feel the divide didn't begin with one dance. It was already forming long before that moment. Then there's the media angle again. Brooklyn gave People magazine an exclusive interview saying he could renew his vows with Nicola every single day. So there's a long track record of him speaking to the press when it suits his narrative. Yet when the Beckhams publicly post birthday tributes or show support for one another, he frames it as performative or manipulative. That contradiction is what fuels the backlash. He's positioned himself as the ultimate victim in this story, after publicly accusing his mother of canceling the wedding dress, after describing her dance as inappropriate, after blocking his entire family on social media, and after holding a vow renewal without them. He then shifted the focus to Nicola being disrespected. He wrote, "My wife has been consistently disrespected by my family, no matter how hard we've tried to come together as one." That's a sweeping claim. But again, there are no concrete examples provided beyond the wedding incidents already debated. He also accused his mother of repeatedly inviting women from his past into their lives in ways that were meant to make Nicola uncomfortable. That's another serious allegation. But without names, dates, or specific events outlined, it remains vague and open to interpretation. At this point, what we're watching feels less like a single explosive moment and more like years of tension being reframed through emotion. When one side sees sabotage, the other may see misunderstanding. When one side sees disrespect, the other may see tradition or coincidence. The central question now isn't just about one dance or one dress. It's about perception. Is Brooklyn reacting to real repeated slights, or is he interpreting neutral actions through a lens shaped by loyalty, pride, and outside influence? Because when you publicly air family conflict at this level, every word becomes permanent, and once narratives harden, walking them back gets nearly impossible. Now let's talk about another layer that had people raising eyebrows. The only woman some viewers saw creating awkward energy publicly wasn't even from Brooklyn's past. It was Selena Gomez. At one point, Selena jokingly referred to herself as part of a throuple with Nicola and Brooklyn, called Brooklyn her husband, teased that he only cooks when she's not around, and was spotted on friendly solo outings with him. It all looked playful on the surface, but fans started questioning the dynamic. Eventually, that friendship appeared to cool off. Nicola reportedly deleted several photos with Selena and posted a message saying, "Some friendships come with expiration dates." That post spoke volumes without naming anyone. Later, neither Nicola nor Brooklyn were seen attending Selena's wedding to Benny Blanco, which only fueled speculation that something had shifted behind the scenes. So when Brooklyn claims his mother was making Nicola uncomfortable by bringing up women from his past, critics point out that there were far more public, recent dynamics that seemed way more relevant. If anything, Brooklyn's interactions with a former celebrity crush becoming overly friendly might raise more questions than a random old connection resurfacing. Then Brooklyn dropped another claim. He said that despite everything, he traveled to London for his father's birthday, but that he and Nicola were essentially left waiting in a hotel room for a week, trying to arrange private quality time. According to him, David refused to see them unless it was at the large birthday party filled with guests and cameras. That's a serious portrayal. It paints his father as someone who only values appearances over personal connection. But critics again question the accuracy of that memory. High-profile birthdays, especially milestone ones, often involve packed schedules, media obligations, and tightly managed guest lists. Is it possible there were scheduling conflicts rather than outright rejection? Brooklyn frames his family as image-driven and obsessed with public optics. But here's the twist. Many observers argue that public attention and narrative control are things Nicola has also actively pursued. She comes from immense wealth, no doubt, but fame and cultural relevance are different currencies. Some insiders have suggested that while the Peltz family holds enormous financial power, the Beckham name carries global recognition that opens entirely different doors. One show business source told the Daily Mail that, with Nicola, it's all about the name. The name is the aim of the game. That comment implies branding is central to the tension. The argument goes that while the Peltz family may have greater wealth, the Beckham brand carries unmatched public influence. It also raises a difficult question that critics aren't afraid to ask. Would the wider public recognize Nicola's name at the same level today if she hadn't married Brooklyn? That's not meant as disrespect, it's about visibility. The Beckham surname has decades of cultural impact tied to sports, fashion, and entertainment. Now, another source told ET that Nicola is grateful Brooklyn stood up for her publicly. They added that her family has basically adopted him and that he feels like he's not even a Beckham anymore. That statement is powerful, because once someone starts feeling disconnected from their original identity, the shift becomes deeper than just one argument. So, where does that leave us? On one side, Brooklyn claims rejection, disrespect, and manipulation. On the other, critics see a pattern of distancing, rebranding, and narrative framing. Is he protecting his wife? Is he reshaping his identity? Or is he burning bridges that once defined his entire life? What's undeniable is this: the story has moved far beyond a wedding dance. It's now about legacy, loyalty, image, and who controls the narrative going forward. Brooklyn then adds another serious claim. He says that when his father finally agreed to meet him, it came with one condition: that Nicola was not invited. According to him, that felt like a direct insult. Later, he claims that when his family traveled to Los Angeles, they refused to see him at all. Now, here's where critics start asking tougher questions. If the Beckham family attended the wedding, tolerated the tension, and even maintained public warmth for years after, what suddenly shifted? What changed so drastically that things escalated to alleged ultimatums and complete distance? Some observers feel there's a missing piece in the story, because family dynamics usually don't flip overnight without a deeper trigger. And when Brooklyn's narrative centers on long-term control and toxicity, critics ask why he didn't distance himself years earlier if it was truly that damaging. There are also comparisons being made in public discourse to other high-profile family rifts in the entertainment world, where disputes grew louder after media interviews, documentaries, and public statements escalated tensions. In those cases, trust reportedly broke down after private conversations became public. Whether that comparison is fair or not, the pattern people point to is similar. Once family matters go to the press, relationships often deteriorate quickly. So critics ask, what exactly happened behind closed doors that led to such a sharp divide? What actions caused an entire family, who once publicly praised Nicola and welcomed her, to allegedly draw a line? Brooklyn anticipates the backlash too. He knows many will assume Nicola is the driving force behind the split. After all, she hasn't lost access to her own family. They remain fully present, supportive, and visible. Meanwhile, the Beckhams appear increasingly distant. From that perspective, some argue that Nicola hasn't had to sacrifice anything. Her family remains intact. Her father officiated the vow renewal. Her circle remains unified. It's Brooklyn who appears to be navigating identity loss, stepping away from a surname that shaped his entire life. Then Brooklyn flips the narrative again. He accuses his family of valuing brand image, public promotion, and endorsements above genuine connection. He suggests that brand Beckham comes first, and that family loyalty is measured by social media posts and public appearances. According to him, love feels conditional, tied to visibility, photo opportunities, and showing up for cameras even if it conflicts with personal priorities. That accusation cuts deep because if true, it reframes everything as image management over intimacy. But if exaggerated, it paints a family who built a global empire as emotionally hollow. The tension now feels less about a wedding dance and more about identity, control, and loyalty. Is Brooklyn breaking free from pressure? Or is he rewriting history through the lens of a strained marriage and outside influence? What's clear is this: once family members begin questioning each other's motives publicly, reconciliation becomes exponentially harder. Because it's no longer just about private disagreements, it's about reputation, narrative, and pride playing out on a global stage. Let's talk about the brand side of this. Brooklyn's cooking content, photography projects, and endorsement deals have largely existed within the visibility created by the Beckham name. That's not an insult, it's reality. When you grow up inside a globally recognized brand, doors open faster. So when he frames public appearances as something that harms his professional life, critics argue that those professional opportunities exist largely because of the same brand he's now criticizing. That contradiction is hard to ignore. Then there's the relationship branding angle. For years, Brooklyn and Nicola have tried to build their own couple identity online. Polished date nights, cooking clips, romantic captions, artsy photo shoots. But many observers say the engagement numbers tell the real story. The posts that gain traction often tie back to controversy or family tension. When the content is just lifestyle or couple aesthetics, it tends to move quietly. Some commentators argue that the only time mainstream attention spikes is when family drama enters the picture. Strip away the Beckham surname and the feud, and the public interest level shifts dramatically. That's not cruelty, that's audience behavior in the digital age. In 2025 especially, engagement reportedly increased when the rift became public. That timing fuels the narrative that controversy drives attention more than the relationship brand itself. Even moments like posting a "showing our friends how he proposed" video years after the proposal raised eyebrows for some viewers. Critics described it as trying to reignite buzz rather than sharing something organically. In influencer culture, timing matters. If content feels delayed or strategically dropped during controversy, audiences pick up on that quickly. Then there was the very public mourning of Nicola's pet Chihuahua. Losing a pet is heartbreaking. No one questions the emotional pain that comes with that. But critics debated the optics of posting posed photos in front of the pet's casket and grave. In an era where every life moment becomes content, people sometimes question where the line between grieving and branding sits. Nicola later filed a lawsuit against the groomer, alleging negligence related to the pet's death. That legal dispute added another headline to an already intense public narrative. It became less about private sorrow and more about public conflict once again. And this is the broader pattern critics are pointing to. Moments that could remain personal often become public statements. Emotional events become press cycles. Private tension becomes Instagram captions. The uncomfortable truth some commentators highlight is this: attention spikes when there's drama attached. When it's just lifestyle content, the reaction is quieter. That dynamic doesn't automatically mean it's intentional, but in the influencer and celebrity ecosystem, controversy undeniably amplifies visibility. At this stage, the question isn't just about family loyalty, it's about identity, branding, and how personal life intersects with public image. Because once your relationship becomes part of your business model, every disagreement, every absence, every emotional post becomes part of the narrative. And in a world where engagement equals influence, the line between authentic expression and strategic storytelling can get blurry fast. Now Brooklyn brings up another example to support his claim. He says his family always shows up for Brand Beckham, every fashion show, every party, every press event. But when Nicola asked Victoria to support an initiative helping displaced dogs during the Los Angeles fires, his mom refused. He frames that as proof that image comes first and real support comes second. But critics argue that this situation isn't that simple. First, not attending one specific event doesn't automatically equal a moral failure. Victoria Beckham is a businesswoman with her own schedule, brand commitments, and obligations. She runs a fashion label, manages international appearances, and has her own philanthropic involvement. There are countless reasons someone might not attend a public-facing event: timing conflicts, logistics, or simply personal preference. Instead of saying, "My mom couldn't make it and that hurt," Brooklyn frames it as evidence of a deeper conspiracy: brand over love. That escalation is what people question. We also don't know Victoria's side of that story. It's entirely possible she chose not to turn a devastating situation like the LA wildfires into a public photo moment. During major disasters, celebrities often get criticized for appearing performative, showing up for cameras while communities are suffering. Many public figures have learned the hard way that visibility during tragedy can backfire fast. There's another possibility too. Support doesn't always mean attendance. It's common for high-profile families to donate privately rather than attach their presence to a crisis. David and Victoria have long histories of supporting charitable causes, particularly in the UK, where much of their philanthropic focus has been centered. Quiet financial support often goes unannounced. Brooklyn's frustration seems rooted in perception that public support equals real support, but that's a narrow definition. In reality, grown adults with careers and reputations weigh these choices carefully. Critics also point out something else. Brooklyn's narrative paints his family as constantly chasing visibility, yet he and Nicola are also deeply embedded in social media culture. Their relationship content, their vow renewal coverage, their exclusive interviews, those are all public-facing moves too. So is this truly about morality, or is it about feeling unsupported in a specific moment? There's also an undercurrent of comparison here. When Brooklyn says his family shows up for fashion shows but not for this cause, it subtly suggests that career visibility matters more to them than Nicola's initiatives. But again, that assumes motive without hearing the other side. The tension keeps circling back to interpretation. One person sees absence as rejection, another sees it as scheduling or discretion. One side views public presence as proof of loyalty, the other may see restraint as maturity. At this stage, the feud feels less about isolated incidents and more about accumulated resentment. Every missed appearance becomes symbolic. Every public post becomes evidence. And once family disagreements start being framed as moral betrayals, reconciliation gets even harder. Because what might have been a private disappointment turns into a public accusation. And once that happens, everyone watching starts picking sides. So realistically, what business would David and Victoria have centering themselves in an LA crisis just to satisfy someone else's optics? That's the question critics keep asking. Public disasters are delicate territory. Showing up can look supportive, but it can also look opportunistic. And in today's climate, celebrities get dragged either way. Then, just 1 week after Brooklyn's emotional Instagram rant, he and Nicola posted about rescuing a puppy. Now, rescuing animals is a good thing. No one's arguing that. But the timing made people raise eyebrows, because when something charitable drops right after a controversy, it can feel strategic rather than spontaneous. Fair or not, optics matter in the social media era. To some observers, it looked less like quiet compassion and more like image correction, especially when the broader narrative was framing Victoria as career-focused, while Nicola positioned herself as animal-loving and heart-centered. The contrast felt amplified. Then Brooklyn addressed the biggest rumor directly. He said the idea that Nicola controls him is completely backwards. He claimed he had been controlled by his parents for most of his life. That's a serious statement. He even said he grew up with overwhelming anxiety and that stepping away from his family made that anxiety disappear. Now, critics reacted strongly to that, because publicly posting a 6-page rant about your family doesn't exactly scream inner peace. Most people who've truly found calm and clarity don't feel the need to unload explosive accusations online. That's what made the "I found peace" line difficult for some to reconcile with his actions. Brooklyn has been married nearly 4 years. He hasn't been living under his parents' roof during that time. So when he frames his freedom as brand new, it raises questions about what specifically changed recently. He continued saying, "My wife and I do not want a life shaped by image, oppression, or manipulation. All we want is peace, privacy, and happiness for us and our future family." That sounds noble, but critics immediately pointed to the contradiction. If privacy is the goal, why air out detailed family grievances to millions of followers? Why go to People magazine? Why issue public statements that escalate rather than de-escalate? Publicly exposing family tension guarantees attention. It guarantees headlines. It guarantees debate. Silence, on the other hand, often lets stories fade. This is why some commentators believe the outcome doesn't align with the stated intention. If the goal was peace, the strategy seems counterproductive, because this drama brought more visibility and scrutiny than quiet distance ever would have. Then, there was the social media ripple from his brother Cruz. He reportedly posted and later deleted a TikTok caption that read, "Imagine hating, and we're just here." That line was short but loaded. It suggested a totally different perspective, one where the rest of the family isn't attacking, but simply existing while being criticized. At this point, the story feels less like one argument and more like two completely different realities colliding in public. Brooklyn frames himself as breaking free and protecting his wife. Critics see a pattern of escalation that contradicts the peace narrative. The uncomfortable truth might be this: once you turn family conflict into public content, it stops being about healing and starts being about positioning. And positioning always comes with attention, whether you claim to want it or not. The real question now isn't who danced first or who posted what. It's whether this public war of words is actually creating the freedom Brooklyn says he feels, or just deepening the divide even further. Meanwhile, in the middle of all this chaos, Victoria's song "Innocent Girl" suddenly shot to #1 on the UK iTunes chart. The timing had people talking. Whether coincidence or curiosity-driven streams, the public clearly had Beckham on the brain. Then David appeared on CNBC's Squawk Box and made comments about social media that many viewers saw as subtle shade without directly naming anyone. He spoke about teaching his children to use social media responsibly and said, "Children are allowed to make mistakes. That's how they learn. That's what I try to teach my kids, but, you have to sometimes let them make those mistakes as well. Calm, controlled, measured." But the timing, interesting. After all that tension, Brooklyn and Nicola were spotted on what many described as a very polished beach pap walk, smiling, holding hands, looking carefree. Of course, couples are allowed to go to the beach, but critics couldn't ignore the optics. Nothing screams, "We're totally unbothered," quite like perfectly timed photos on an empty shoreline right after a public feud explodes. Now here's another layer. Brooklyn reportedly signed a prenup in 2022. That means if the marriage were ever to end, he would not be entitled to the Peltz family fortune. Financially speaking, that's a clear boundary. So the narrative that he's chasing billionaire wealth doesn't really hold up legally. If anything, it puts pressure on him to build something independently. And that's where critics shift the focus. What exactly is the standalone Brooklyn Beckham brand offering right now? His cooking content hasn't consistently broken through. His photography has been met with mixed reactions. Without the Beckham name attached, Would the engagement look the same? Nicola, meanwhile, is positioned as an actress. But her most recent major film project, Lola, marked her first leading role in 4 years. She wrote it, directed it, and starred in it. That's ambitious. But commercially, the film struggled. Reports stated it grossed only $648 at the box office during its limited run. The plot follows Lola James, a character navigating addiction, trauma, and economic hardship. Some critics were harsh. The Guardian described the film as poverty exploitation, suggesting it portrayed hardship in a way that felt performative rather than deeply examined. They argued the character moved from one traumatic event to the next without meaningful exploration of the underlying issues. Now, film criticism is subjective. Independent films often struggle financially, but when public perception is already fragile, weak box office numbers and negative reviews don't help stabilize a personal brand. So the bigger question becomes this: beyond the Beckham surname and beyond family drama, what are Brooklyn and Nicola building long-term? Because public sympathy fades fast. Drama spikes attention, but it doesn't sustain careers. At some point, you need a product, talent, or project that stands on its own. Right now, the conversation isn't just about a wedding dance or Instagram captions. It's about legacy, relevance, and whether distancing from a global brand strengthens or weakens your own. And that's the part that makes this whole situation feel risky. Because once you separate yourself from a powerful name, you have to prove you can shine without it. When Nicola's film Lola premiered, the support system was strong. The Beckham family showed up. Her own family was there. Public figures like Elon Musk and former close friend Selena Gomez were also in attendance at different stages of the film's rollout. On the surface, it looked unified and supportive. But critics focused less on who attended and more on the reviews. The Guardian wrote that what made Lola feel disconnected was the contrast between its portrayal of hardship and Nicola's exceptionally privileged lifestyle. They described it as an example of poverty exploitation, suggesting the storytelling lacked depth and felt careless given the context of her background. Harsh words. Before Lola, her most visible film credit had been in Holidate, a romantic comedy where she appeared briefly in what many described as a cameo role. So from a mainstream perspective, her acting career hasn't yet produced a breakout performance that defines her independently from her last name. Fair or not, a lot of people primarily recognize her as Brooklyn Beckham's wife. And Brooklyn? His own career path has been just as heavily scrutinized. Back in 2017, he enrolled in a photography degree at Parsons School of Design in New York. It was meant to be a serious creative pursuit. But he didn't complete the first year of the 4-year course and eventually left the program. Shortly after, his photography book What I See was published in June 2017. The book immediately sparked debate. Some critics felt the captions were overly simplistic. One image of an elephant reportedly included the caption, "Elephants in Kenya, so hard to photograph, but incredible to see." Critics mocked the phrasing. Other photos were described as blurry, grainy, or out of focus. Some viewers appreciated the raw aesthetic. Others questioned whether the work reflected genuine artistic development. There were images like a dimly lit dinner scene with commentary about the lighting on someone's hands and face. Supporters called it moody and artistic. Detractors called it underdeveloped. It's important to note that Brooklyn was very young at the time, around 18 years old. Vogue even described the exhibition of his photography in London as a major accomplishment for someone who had only recently picked up a camera. That framing positioned him as a young creative experimenting in public. But here's where critics circle back to the bigger picture. His parents supported that early creative push. They helped platform the exhibition. Many of the subjects in his photography were members of his own family, the same family he now accuses of causing anxiety and control. That contradiction fuels public skepticism. Because on one hand, he benefited from their visibility, connections, and promotional support to launch creative projects. On the other, he now frames that same ecosystem as emotionally oppressive. The debate isn't about whether Brooklyn should pursue photography or cooking or any passion he wants. It's about consistency in narrative. If the brand built you up publicly and funded your early ventures, can it simultaneously be the sole source of lifelong control? That's the tension viewers keep coming back to. At this stage, the story isn't just about a wedding or a dance or social media captions. It's about identity, legacy, independence, and whether Brooklyn and Nicola can truly establish something that stands on its own, separate from the Beckham machine they're criticizing. Because once you step away from a global surname, the spotlight doesn't disappear. It just shifts to what you can build without it. When Brooklyn's photography book dropped, the backlash was loud. Critics questioned the quality, and the publisher eventually defended the project by saying, "What I see is a book for teenagers by a teenager." That framing tried to lower the bar, presenting it as youthful expression rather than high art. But once you publish internationally and hold exhibitions, people are going to judge the work seriously. After that chapter cooled off, Brooklyn pivoted. Photography faded into the background, and cooking became the new lane. In 2022, he launched an online series called Cooking with Brooklyn. On paper, it sounded fun. Casual recipes, lifestyle vibes, building a food brand. But then reports surfaced claiming that each episode involved around 60+ crew members and cost close to $100,000 per episode to produce. That number sparked major debate. Critics argued that for someone without formal culinary training, that level of production felt excessive, and yet he still landed a spot on the Today Show to present one of his recipes. The dish: sausage, bacon, and eggs on buttered bread. Simple breakfast sandwich energy. He cracked an egg, assembled ingredients, and that was pretty much it. Now here's the tension. There's nothing wrong with basic food. Everyone loves a solid egg sandwich. But when you're presented as an emerging chef on national television, expectations rise. Viewers expect innovation, technique, or at least a personal twist. Instead, what they saw felt ordinary. Some critics suggested the platform was less about culinary skill and more about the Beckham surname opening doors. In entertainment, that label, Nepo Baby, gets thrown around fast, and whether fair or not, it's stuck to Brooklyn. Supporters argue he's experimenting and learning publicly. Detractors say no unknown amateur would get that level of exposure for something so simple. Then there was the viral moment where he used a blowtorch to toast bread that already appeared toasted. The clip circulated quickly. To some, it looked creative and playful. To others, it felt unnecessary and theatrical. Another viral interaction involved Daniel Mack, known for asking luxury car drivers what they do for a living. When Brooklyn was spotted in a $1.2 million McLaren, he reportedly leaned into the chef identity. That moment reignited debate about whether he's building credibility organically or leaning heavily on family branding. Here's the real issue critics keep circling. It's not about switching careers. Plenty of creatives pivot. It's about depth. Photography didn't fully land. Cooking hasn't fully landed. Acting isn't his lane. So what is the long-term identity? When you have access to elite production teams, national television slots, and luxury visibility, the public expects output that matches the resources. That's the pressure that comes with privilege. But here's the flip side. Growing up in a famous family means your learning curve happens under a microscope. Every experiment becomes a headline. Every mistake becomes a meme. The bigger question isn't whether Brooklyn can cook or take photos. It's whether he can develop something authentic and sustainable that stands without the Beckham scaffolding. Because talent can grow, skill can improve, but consistency and credibility take time. And right now, the public isn't just watching his recipes. They're watching whether he can carve out an identity that doesn't depend on family drama to stay relevant. When Brooklyn was once asked what advice he would give to people trying to get into cooking, the response felt vague and surface level. That moment became symbolic for critics, because the issue many people point to isn't simply talent, it's development. When you grow up extremely privileged, you don't always get pushed the way others do. You're not forced to grind in small kitchens, fail publicly without safety nets, or hustle your way up from nothing. That doesn't make someone bad, but it does change how skill gets built. And that's why the conversation around so-called Nepo babies keeps popping up. It's not that they can't succeed, it's that audiences can feel when someone hasn't been sharpened by real challenge yet. Skill usually comes from pressure, repetition, rejection, and starting small. But here's where critics say Brooklyn crossed into hypocrisy. When privilege starts getting reframed as trauma, people push back hard. At the core, this feud isn't about war, poverty, loss, or survival. It's about a luxury wedding disagreement, branding tension, and a family clash that most households experience in some form, just without cameras and headlines. Weddings are stressful. Anyone who's planned one knows that. There are expectations, egos, budgets, logistics, traditions, and emotions all colliding at once. Families disagree about seating charts, outfits, speeches, music. That's normal. But in this case, the wedding still happened. It was extravagant. Money wasn't an issue. The venue was stunning. The guest list was elite. The dress was couture. It wasn't a story of sacrifice or hardship. It was a story of things not being exactly perfect. And that's where public sympathy starts thinning out. When a high-fashion dress disagreement or a dance moment becomes framed as deep emotional damage, people struggle to relate. There's a difference between genuine emotional hurt and reframing luxury-level inconvenience as life-altering trauma. That contrast is what's driving a lot of the backlash. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about someone fighting to survive. It's about expectations not aligning in a world where almost everything else was already handed on a silver platter. And once you take what most families would handle privately, awkward moments, hurt feelings, pride clashes, and broadcast it globally, the stakes change. The public doesn't see raw suffering. They see privilege colliding with ego. That's the uncomfortable truth at the heart of this entire saga. It's not that feelings aren't real, it's that perspective matters. When you've had access to wealth, influence, global platforms, and safety nets your whole life, the threshold for what qualifies as oppression looks very different to everyone watching. And that's why this story hits the way it does. It's not about whether someone felt hurt, it's about whether that hurt justifies turning a family disagreement into a worldwide spectacle. When someone hasn't really faced life-altering hardship, even small pushback can feel massive. If you're not used to hearing no, boundaries can feel like betrayal. If disappointment rarely hits, even a minor setback can feel like the world collapsing. That's why some critics believe this entire situation may be about perspective more than oppression. When a family questions decisions, suggests caution, or pushes back on optics, it doesn't automatically mean control. Sometimes it just means concern. Now, that doesn't invalidate anyone's feelings. If Brooklyn says he experienced anxiety, that's his reality. But from the outside, people struggle to reconcile the scale of the reaction with the scale of the events. A disagreement about a wedding dress timeline, a Latin singer hyping the groom's mother during a performance. Those are uncomfortable moments, but are they life-defining trauma? That's where the public disconnect happens. Real trauma is often quiet. It's rarely paired with coordinated media drops, magazine exclusives, and social media manifestos. When pain becomes a press cycle, people naturally question intent. Again, this isn't about dismissing emotions, it's about proportion. When family tension gets reframed into a global narrative of control and sabotage, the reaction is bound to be intense. And when accusations are paired with public storytelling, critics start wondering whether the media is being used as leverage rather than as healing. Now let's talk about some of the awkward public moments that fans have analyzed. At the London premiere of David's Netflix documentary Beckham in October 2023, there was a clip that circulated online. In the footage, David and Victoria are posing for photographers. Brooklyn appears to try to pull Nicola into the frame. He looks around slightly unsure, and Nicola's body language appears reserved. Some viewers described her expression as tense. Others say it was just a quick, candid moment caught out of context. Victoria doesn't visibly react. David eventually gestures, and the entire family gathers for a group shot. But critics pointed out that Brooklyn didn't wait for his parents to finish their pose before shifting positions. Was it intentional, or just normal red carpet chaos? These events move fast, and angles can be misleading. There's also a 2022 outing clip where Nicola appears to stand with her back turned while Victoria attempts to join the conversation. Brooklyn is seen placing his hands around Nicola's waist, possibly trying to draw her attention back into the group. Again, some viewers interpreted it as tension. Others saw nothing more than awkward timing and crowded event energy. Here's the truth about red carpet footage. Short clips can create powerful narratives. A single facial expression becomes proof. A half-second delay becomes shade. But without full context, it's impossible to know what was actually said or felt in those moments. That's the danger of analyzing body language through a lens of existing drama. Once a feud narrative exists, every interaction looks loaded. At the end of the day, what we're watching is a high-profile family navigating pride, branding, loyalty, and emotion in front of cameras that never blink. Some see isolation, some see independence, some see manipulation, some see misunderstanding. But one thing is certain: once family conflict becomes public content, every blink, every pose, and every caption turns into evidence in a story the world feels entitled to judge. And that's where this saga truly lives now. Not just in what happened, but in how every moment gets interpreted through a magnifying glass. And then there are the clips that keep circulating online. Moments where Nicola is smiling sweetly for the cameras, then her expression shifts the second she turns away. Fans freeze frame everything now. Every glance, every facial change, every split second gets analyzed like it's part of a bigger pattern. On top of that, reports from the Daily Mail claim that Nicola's father, Nicola Peltz, has taken an increasingly dim view of his British in-laws. According to unnamed sources, the Peltz side allegedly sees the Beckhams as flashy and new money, even sneering at Victoria's past as a Spice Girl. Meanwhile, insiders claim Nelson views himself as more statesmanlike and traditional, which supposedly created a subtle class divide between the families. One friend reportedly said that while both families are extremely wealthy, there's been a sense of snobbery on the Peltz side. The idea that they consider themselves above the Beckhams in class and status adds yet another layer to this already complicated feud, because now it's not just personal, it's cultural, generational, and possibly even about legacy. And that's the full breakdown from start to finish. The wedding tension, the dance drama, the social media blocks, the branding battles, the interviews, the sources, the subtle digs, all of it. Now, I want to hear from you. Are you Team Beckham, or do you think Brooklyn and Nicola are justified in how they've handled this? Is this a story about control and breaking free, or pride and perspective getting out of hand? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation is far from over. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe to CelebRush right now. We break down celebrity drama from every angle, and the stories only get crazier from here. Turn on post notifications so you never miss a premiere, and check out the other videos on the channel if you want more breakdowns just like this. Trust me, this saga might be cooling down now, but Hollywood never stays quiet for long.